Hello and welcome. Despite enduring repeated strikes from the United States and Israel, Iran is making it clear its nuclear program may be down, but it's far from out. In a bold statement, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reaffirmed Tehran's capacity to rebuild and resume uranium enrichment, citing the continued availability of its scientists, technology and equipment. But beyond the defiance lies a key message. Diplomacy isn't off the table. Araghchi's remarks suggest that while Iran is prepared to act on its nuclear rights, it is also leaving the door open for a future deal if Washington is willing to engage sincerely. With the United States military threats escalating and diplomatic channels narrowing, the question now is whether both sides can step back from confrontation and return to the negotiating table before the window closes for good. Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Now, despite US and Israeli strikes, Iran retains the full capacity to rebuild its nuclear infrastructure and ramp up uranium enrichment, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi declared recently, emphasizing that Tehran still possesses the critical scientists, technology and equipment needed. Araghchi affirmed that Iran has the right to restart its enrichment program at a time and manner of its choosing, based on evolving conditions. He stated that the United States must realize technology cannot be destroyed by bombs and that only diplomacy can yield a lasting solution. According to Araghchi, if Washington's main concern is that Iran never acquires nuclear weapons, that is achievable. However, he cautioned that military pressure has proven ineffective and that continued confrontation risks not just diplomacy, but the very possibility of returning to the negotiating table.
With tensions rising, the prospect of a nuclear deal remains elusive. This follows recent statements by Iran's foreign minister affirming Tehran's commitment to uranium enrichment, despite damage to its nuclear facilities during the 12-day war. Abbas Araghchi said Iran faces strong pressure to abandon talks, especially given what he described as the Trump administration's lack of interest in genuine negotiations. He also suggested financial compensation may be required for Iran to rejoin talks with the United States. Araghchi confirmed Iran still has the capacity to enrich uranium. However, resumption depends on evolving conditions. Regarding talks with the E3, Araghchi said the only remaining reason to negotiate with them is the trigger mechanism. He warned that if it is activated, Europe will be excluded from future discussions. Following the intense 12-day war, Araghchi emphasized that there is no formal ceasefire, only a mutual pause in hostilities, stating that both sides could resume action at any time. Meanwhile, he noted that the International Atomic Energy Agency has agreed to a new approach to cooperation with Iran. However, Tehran criticized IAEA chief Rafael Grossi for failing to condemn the attacks, leading Iran's parliament to suspend cooperation with the agency. U.S. President Donald Trump, on the other hand, voiced surprise at Iran's ongoing enrichment efforts and warned of further strikes. His administration continues its maximum pressure campaign, imposing new sanctions on Iranian oil networks. as both sides hold firm to their demands. The question remains, can diplomacy prevail, or will rising tensions spark renewed conflict?
The tense situation between the United States and Iran there. Now, today, more than 200 trucks have crossed through the Rafah crossing from Egypt to Gaza, carrying vital aid ranging from basic food supplies to fuel. As the humanitarian situation in Gaza reaches a critical point, Egypt is intensifying its relief efforts. Since the outbreak of the devastating war on Gaza, Egypt has consistently stood at the forefront of defending the Palestinian cause and providing essential assistance to the people of Gaza. Recently, Egypt has faced a systematic campaign aimed at undermining its leading role in delivering humanitarian aid to the Palestinians, who continue to suffer from the effects of Israeli military actions. With aid convoys steadily moving through the Rafah crossing toward Kerem Abu Salem, Cairo is reaffirming its unwavering commitment to supporting Palestinians and addressing the urgent needs of the war-torn region. These efforts underscore Egypt's expanding role as a key humanitarian and regional actor amid escalating tensions, emphasizing that the Palestinian cause remains and will always remain one of Egypt's highest priorities. Now, following President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's directives, Egypt has continued airdropping humanitarian aid over Gaza, aiming to support Palestinians amid dire conditions. Egyptian military spokesman stated that over the past 3 days, 9 Egyptian military aircraft delivered dozens of tons of food supplies to areas inaccessible by land. These airdrops coincide with Egypt's ongoing efforts to send aid trucks by road, reinforcing its commitment to providing comprehensive support to Gaza's residents. The third group of Egypt's 6th Red Crescent aid convoys has departed for Gaza, marking the largest number of trucks sent since aid deliveries began. This significant convoy carries a wide range of humanitarian supplies, including several tons of essential goods to support those in need in the Gaza Strip. The National Alliance has launched its 11th humanitarian convoy to support Gaza, consisting of 200 relief trucks. The convoy, organized in coordination with 13 institutions from the National Alliance, carries 400 tons of essential food supplies tailored to the urgent needs on the ground in Gaza. Meanwhile, Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati has affirmed that Egypt remains the steadfast supporter of the Palestinians and will persist in backing the Palestinian cause until an independent state is established. Speaking at the 6th edition of the Egyptians Abroad Conference, Abdel Ati condemned attempts to malign Egypt's supportive role, stating that Israel exploits these baseless campaigns to mask its own crimes. Egypt's foreign minister emphasized that the hostile attacks against Egypt aim to divert attention from Israel's sole responsibility for the Gaza tragedy. Now going back to the Iranian foreign minister's recent statements, and that story we started with on the program, and we're now joined from Tehran by Ibrahim Sher, an expert on Iranian affairs, and from Washington we're joined by Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here with us on the program. I'll start with you, Mr. Sher. Tehran recently affirmed its right to resume its enrichment program. stating that the timing and manner would depend on prevailing conditions. How do you view the words of the foreign minister?
In the name of Allah, the outset greetings to you and your esteemed audiences. We should consider that the enrichment right is a legitimate right as the right of exploration of oil. Therefore, Tehran isn't that ready to giving up such a right in the right time, or at least in the short range. Iran has always affirmed to continue the enrichment, and it's ready to decrease the percentage. It is notably that the Assistant Foreign Minister of Iran stated yesterday that the increase in the enrichment of 60% was under the nuclear watchdogs that never stated before. So therefore, Iran's steps as a response of U.S. withdrawal or the European sanctions was under the supervision of the international watchdogs. Based on the Iranian officials, to giving up, or rather to continue with the resumption of enrichment are steps under the UN watchdogs.
And coming to you, Ginger Chapman, Aragchi has suggested that Iran may be owed financial compensation from the United States. What do you make of that? And can you see Trump handing over the cash?
Yes, well, greetings to today, Mark, and thank you for having us, and greetings to your viewers and your other guests. And it is with great interest that Americans watched Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, his press conference, and we did note that he did say that he wanted to know why the United States attacked Iran in the middle of negotiations. Second, he wanted assurances that we would not attack Iran again in the middle of negotiations. And third, he requested compensation for the damage that we caused during our first round of attacks. And this is brilliant. It once again highlights that, first of all, Iran does have the right under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to enrich uranium, reprocess for their own peaceful civilian nuclear purposes, for energy, for medical use. It also highlights the betrayal by the International Atomic Energy Agency when Rafael Grossi, their weapons inspector or their nuclear energy inspector, was actually collaborating with Israel and feeding the names of scientists to Israeli intelligence. So to answer your question, will the United States fork over the cash? Well, the United States, being a big bully and seeing how Trump's recent attempts to amass as much investment, as much global money as we can based on perhaps past injustices, it's doubtful that we are going to actually fork over any cash during the Trump administration. However, it does drive home the point that America has acted outside of the law. Our strikes on Iran were in violation of international law. Domestically, they were in violation of the United States Constitution and also the 1973 War Powers Act. And we have really painted ourselves into a corner because for months we were worried Israel would drag us into war with Iran, and now they have dragged us into war with Iran, and we have spent a great deal of money. It turns out we used 25% of our THAAD missiles defending Israel from airstrikes. Israel suffered $8 billion in damage. They want the United States aid to pay for their $8 billion in damage. Now Iran would like us to pay for the damage we caused to Iran's facilities. And really what this is highlighting is that America is not just being isolated on the world stage, but we are also becoming weaker. We are becoming perhaps a little ridiculed, and other countries are standing up to our actions. So Minister Araghchi's most recent interview laying out his conditions, much like we see Putin laying out his conditions for resolving the war in Ukraine, much like we see President Xi laying out his counter-tariff responses to our tariff threats, and much like we see India's recent statement a couple days ago that they are going to continue buying cheap Russian oil instead of caving into America's threats of 100% tariffs, because the world can see the writing on the wall. India is looking at the West, looking at the East, and saying we need to act in our own self-interest.
Okay.
Which is what other countries are doing now, rather than cave into America's bullying. So this is a completely new, unprecedented state of affairs.
Okay, well, I want to bring Ibrahim Sher back in, if I can. In his recent remarks, Araghchi emphasized that technology can perhaps be destroyed by bombs, but only negotiations can lead to a mutually acceptable agreement. That sounds like Tehran is willing to get back to the negotiating table, would you say?
Tehran never get itself out of the negotiation, but Israel and America did, meaning that Israel intended to strike Iran, as stated by Netanyahu, supported by America. So even the Iran or the Israeli strike against Iran was before the negotiations in 2 days. Tehran was very much open to the negotiations, but has a specific condition that not to abandon the right of negotiation, not to go through negotiation under the pressure, and to have some sort of a genuine negotiation and not a political game. But along with America is different to 180 degrees. Iran has a main condition that negotiation would lead in a genuine agreement without any political manipulations, and that would call it be some sort of a compensation. And this matter talked about it upon the final or at the end of the war. Iran has already mentioned the matter of negotiation on daily basis, what we call the Iranian demands or compensation, as the casualties were was very much. So it is better for America to go into serious negotiation with Iran, as Iran, in order to understand its mind set isn't on the basis of breaking down. So you're breaking me down in war and you can gain out of it. The matter is radically different. Iran is very much ready to a new confrontation we may call prolonged and expanded. So it is better in reaching into agreement in the right moment.
Okay, Ginger Chapman, coming back to you. So the military aggression by Israel and the United States has proven pretty ineffective when it comes to curbing Iran's nuclear program. But that doesn't mean that military action is off the table, does it? Can you see Trump going back to military action against Iran at any point?
First, with respect to negotiations, it is difficult to see how other countries can take negotiations with America seriously. and also not be alarmed at the prospect, because once again, we've used negotiations as a cover for surprise attacks, Operation Spiderweb in Ukraine, in Russia, Midnight Hammer against Iran. And with respect to the prospect of military action, further military action, we saw after our first bunker buster strikes on Fordow and Natanz that Trump said, we succeeded, totally obliterated, we're done, overdone with, gone, we don't need to go back in, because he wants to move on from these messy brink of war conflicts. And then after Netanyahu said, well, we don't think we accomplished our goals, we may need to go back in, then Trump changed his tune and said, well, if we need to strike again, we will. So this reflects our own schizophrenia, our lack of strategy, the fact that we negotiate by social media posts rather than sitting at the negotiating table. And whether or not we will strike again, the internal division within America right now, we have the war hawks such as Lindsey Graham, General Donahue, making wild threats that perhaps America cannot back up. And we see other more moderate voices pointing out that we do not have the munitions for a long-term war with any other country. Our military analysts are saying that we have enough air defense and missiles for perhaps 2 weeks of war. On the other hand, we do see America is going in through the back door in Iran. We are maneuvering in Azerbaijan. So this war is not over by any means. But whether America will strike militarily, that is highly doubtful at this stage, because we do not see a military path forward. However, we have engaged in many stupid, brash actions over the past several months. So we need to keep an eye on what America is going to do through the back door. We are still trying to create unrest. Direct military strikes may not be on the table right now, but everything is up in the air, and Donald Trump is the wild card.
And coming to you, Ibrahim Shah, Washington's objective is to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Do you think you can reach a point through diplomacy where Iran would be allowed by the United States and the international community to enrich uranium for non-weaponized purposes?
As much as I understood the question, Iran isn't going to military enrichment. Its main goal is peaceful enrichment, and even throughout the past negotiation with the US in the 13th, before the 13th of June, Iran said that it will decrease the enrichment to the 3%, and what is left will be exported to Russia. So Iran provided too many concessions, but we may say that Iran might has a political instrument such as withdrawal from the NPT, or to go forward of nuclear militarily development isn't going to do so. But the Iranian nuclear program is fully monitored by the international watchdog, and you'll find that Israel isn't monitored but internationally. This is sarcasm. But the nuclear program is already monitored by the UN watchdog and even the United States before the Iranian Revolution. And therefore, nuclear program is peaceful purposes and cannot be exaggerated for the aim of devil internationally, but practically on the ground is a 100% peaceful purposes program.
Okay, and Ginger Chapman, do you think the United States really understands Iran? It seems to constantly either underestimate it or not really understand either its people or its leadership.
Actually, the United States for the past several decades has had a policy of not understanding our allies or adversaries. Our military advisors have had a policy of the United States can do what we want and other countries will comply. Our lack of understanding has gotten us to this point where the world has changed and America is slowly waking up to the fact that facts on the ground no longer support America's unbridled hegemony, our belief that we can do whatever we want and other countries will just comply. So as facts on the ground in Ukraine, in the economic trading arena with our relations with China, other countries standing up to American intransigence, as America slowly wakes up to the changing world, we will have to accept that we can no longer bully other countries into compliance. We will have to accept that this is a multipolar, multinodular world, and we will have to get along with our allies and our adversaries. We still have time to pull it off. We have more moderate voices in Congress. We are battling a civil war in our government, in Trump's cabinet, in Congress right now to move forward to find our place in the world without bringing the world to the brink of World War III. America can still be the shining city on the hill. We can still pull it off. We can still be a force for good in the world instead of a force for conflict. And this is what we are battling with right now at home and abroad. But I am optimistic that America can still be the shining city on the hill, and we can reach sanity and reverse this, hopefully during Trump's administration. It may not be through Trump. Other voices are prevailing.
Okay, well, and coming to you, Ibrahim Shah, can I ask you, now that a little bit of time has now passed since that 12-day war started by Israel, how are people feeling? Not the leadership, but how are Iranians feeling? What's the mood across the country at the moment?
The Iranian people's mood has changed at larger scale following the war. Before the war, 70 to 80% was along or in favor of going through negotiation and in such a file. Following the war and after the Iranian people realized the American coverage provided to Israel, so the mood of the Iranian people has changed a lot, pressuring the government not to go through the negotiation, or at least or to stay things as still. And even the opponents of the regime or the Iranian state requested to be in line with the state at the moment of realizing that there is an enemy wanted to destroy their nations. So for the United States in any future negotiation to provide guarantees to the international community, or not even for the people of Iran, Iran isn't going for war or to destroy its civilian and scientific capabilities. And even at the last days of the war, the American strikes targeted the infrastructure that made the great change of the Iranian mode. Since the 80s, Iran never engaged in any war. At the end of 86, never engaged in any confrontation militarily, and even the war only with Iraq. So we're talking about more than 40 years, and Iran doesn't know the meaning of war. In a day or night, America gave a green light to Israel for such a war that made the greatest change for the Iraq.
I'm going to have to end it there, I'm afraid. We're just out of time, but thank you very much indeed. Ibrahim Shah, an expert on Iranian affairs, and Ginger Chapman, a lawyer and political analyst. Thank you both for being on the program today. And that is the end of today's Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.